Okay, Mayor, we're ready to begin whenever you are.
Okay, today is Wednesday, August 19th, and I will call the regular meeting of the Oregon City Commission to order. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Here.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Present.
Commissioner Rachel L. Smith, sorry. Here. Mayor Dan Holliday.
Here. So what's next, Katie?
We are on to oh, no, we aren't. We are on to, yes, presentations.
Take the picture with what's his face.
Okay, before that, I have a couple things I want to say. One, you'll see me turn off my video most of the time, and that's because with the bandwidth I have here at the house, if I have too many videos up, especially my own, it tends to close Zoom or to glitch it out. So I'll keep my video off most of the time. The second thing I have to say is that Chief Mann and a couple other people have commented that other folks have commented that I have been slurring my words like I have been drinking. The fact is that although I don't have to tell you this, I will. I've been going through a medical situation that you all are aware of, but one of the things that has started to cause over the last 6 or 8 months is me not being able to speak as well as I used to. And so it's not because I'm drinking, and it gets worse as the night goes on. And I think both Mr. Conkle and Mr. Band can testify that they've met with me in the middle of the day and have noticed the issue. So I just want to be clear to everyone. Thank you, Mr. Band. Let's go ahead and go to presentations.
Thank you, Commissioner, and our Mayor and Commissioners for this opportunity. So tonight we're going to do something a little different than we usually do. It's a little fun activity that I hope you can appreciate. I want to introduce Charlie Johnson, who's sitting in our audience, and we'll try to get him up here for a photo in just a little bit here. But he has been honored with an award for a production of a video that we want to show you. But I wanted to say a few words about the competition that he was in. And so I'm going to go through that real quickly. The Regional Coalition of Clean Rivers and Streams is a partnership of local public agencies in the Portland-Vancouver metro area. The coalition was developed by a group of stormwater managers with an interest in trying to get ahead of pollution before it enters the stormwater system. Over the years, they've inspired a variety of effective and interesting public education materials, including public service announcement videos. The River Starts Here is a public education campaign designed to help all of us recognize our role in protecting water quality and give us some simple ideas on how we can help with this effort. They basically teach people how stormwater pollution impacts our rivers and streams and provides the steps we can take to protect our water. This year, the River Starts Here campaign invited 6th through 12th grade students to enter the Portland metropolitan area middle and high school video contest. Over the last year, 36 students from throughout the metro region created videos to share their stories of how to keep rivers and streams healthy. Over 4,000 community members have watched these videos, and viewers have provided comments and feedback on their favorites. And I noticed the Johnson family is pretty pronounced on the number of members watching the video or involved in this meeting, and I think they might have been some of the 4,000 that maybe probably participated in this. So there were a total of 7 winners this year, and $1,650 in cash was awarded. Charlie Johnson was selected to receive an honorable mention award and is receiving a $50 cash prize for his stop motion film on stormwater pollution. Charlie was a 6th grader at Alliance Charter. Well, he's going to be a 7th grader at Alliance Charter, but he was, at the time of the competition, a 6th grader. So we want to honor this young man for his efforts by sharing his video and then have a large check to go along with his real award dollars. So a photo opportunity with that larger check. So with that, Katie, if you could show this video, I'd appreciate it. So, we should give a small round of applause maybe here just for that. So Charlie, I don't know if you want to come up, but I think that would be the right thing to do. Kristen's gonna take your photo with Commissioner Rachel Lyle Smith and Commissioner Denise McGriff, despite her name tag. Her name is Denise McGriff, not
Yeah.
Rocky Smith Jr.
I was gonna,
So,
Happy to be Rocky.
I'll switch your nameplates now, I guess, 'cause.
you can. And you can, I don't know, are we not removing masks? I guess we're not removing them.
Well, thanks for the opportunity
Why don't you hold your check?
Yeah, the check is bigger than, there we go. Now, we're really smiling underneath these masks.
I know, I can't even tell if you're smiling or not, and just hold on a second and I'll do one.
Can Charlie pop his mask off real quick? or-
Oh, yeah.
If he wants, yeah.
Well, we have ours on.
We'll make it quick. Awesome.
Great, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Recognize those Legos.
Yeah.
And I will be going back
Be a
to.
chump, don't dump.
Katie, what's next?
Thank you, Charlie.
Next is our presentation by ODOT staff regarding the I-205 tolling project update.
How long has ODOT got for this?
They have about 20 minutes.
Let's keep it to that.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Give me just 1 second to get up the presentation here. Having some
That was so
technical.
nice, lots of family were on the line, which is nice.
There we go.
Great job, John, thank you.
Yeah, that was fun. We don't do that. No.
We can have more fun.
PD does all that stuff all the time.
We can have more fun.
Okay, I think John is going to introduce the folks that we have that are going to present from ODOT, so give it to him.
Yes, thank you again, Mayor and Commissioners, for this opportunity for ODOT to present on I-205 tolling. Lucinda Broussard, who's the tolling program director, I think is going to lead this. If it's based on some of the presentations I've seen in the past, she's going to lead off. Heather Wills is part of the consultant team, project manager, and Matt Delota is our alternatives analysis lead. So the three of them have an element of this presentation, and I think they've been presenting this across the metro area and to various groups that are involved in this. So I guess we'll just let them take off.
Good evening, I'm Lucinda Broussard, Toll Program Director for ODOT. I have with me this evening Heather Wills and Matt Delata. We'll be presenting an overview of what's going on the toll program. We're going to specifically look at I-205, but I will give a short update on what's going on with I-5. Next slide, please. You can probably keep going, Heather. And go to the next. There we go. So for I-205, I kind of want to give what project area we're looking at. OR 213 to Stafford Road. The orange block you see there is the Abernathy Bridge, and this is the area we're talking about regarding tolling tonight. Next slide, please. We talk about what we've heard in the last 3 years, and 3 years sounds like, well, just heard about you guys today. The value feasibility analysis was done in 2017, ended in 2018. We're taking comments from there, moving them forward, so all of this has a foundation in the value feasibility pricing analysis. That's why it's the last 3 years what we've heard. And you can see that first one's really important. It's about where and who, it's like, where is that revenue, where does it go, and how is it used? I was at the Transportation Commission last week asking that the revenue generated on a corridor stays on a corridor. So the way the legislation is written now in House Bill 2017, it says revenues generated by tolling are to be put in a congestion management fund, in which case it was to go to bottleneck projects wherever they are in the state. What I'm asking the commission is that they have the revenue that's collected is dedicated to that revenue where it was collected at. I'll be back in September to have another conversation about it. I believe that we can get there, and hoping for a decision by the end of this year, if not sooner. There are a few other things on here that we are looking at and have been, we kind of distilled this list down. You can imagine we received 5,000 comments, and these have risen to the top and have stayed there over the last 3 years. So we've taken these comments, kind of made them questions, and then start fixing or figuring out what are the solutions to these. So tolls are not equitable across all income levels is something we've looked at. And I believe I have a slide here regarding our Equity and Mobility Advisory Committee, which I'll talk about. Transit on the corridor. We do have a transit multimodal group, which includes representatives from along the corridor and the transit community along with Southwest Washington, and then diversion, which is a big one. And Matt is going to talk about that tonight. He'll talk about the alternatives, and then he'll talk about what diversion looks like against those alternatives. Next slide, please.
I have a quick question.
Sure. Yeah.
Of the 5,000 comments you've gotten, how many are negative about tolling in general?
These were comments during the feasibility analysis. We are collecting comments now during our 45-day period. So we haven't amassed, we haven't distilled those yet. These are back from 2018.
All right, thank you.
Sure. So let me just update. They're back from 2018, plus any presentations we've done in the last 6 months since I've been here. And some of those were the same ones that were being asked even 6 months ago. 45-day comment period. Thanks, Heather. So we are right now in a comment period, started August 3rd and September 16th. And what we're looking at are the alternatives. What toll scheme would work on, and I mean scheme that meets both the objectives of revenue generation and congestion management on I-205. So we are looking for feedback. Everything is in draft. I need to say that like 5 million times because we haven't landed anywhere yet. We're trying to get there. So everything that we even talked to you about tonight, the alternatives, purpose and need statement, the goals and objectives, those are all in draft. And the comments are towards those drafts, and that's what we're trying to, we're trying to refine what we're doing with the comments. We're looking for feedback. And we are looking for feedback in any way we can get it. And we are trying to do things like this, which are update committees, boards, agencies, public, open house. We just got invited to a neighborhood open house, so yay. Virtual, of course, everything has kind of changed, but we are looking for comments to what we're about to present. Next slide, please. Orange dot is where we'll be after the 45-day comment period. We'll mass all the comments, take them before OTC, refine the alternatives, the purpose and need statement, the goals and objectives, and FHWA, which is Federal Highway Administration, will then give us this is what we're taking into the environmental review process. The orange dot represents the same environmental review process, but I-205, as you can see, it's this fall. I-5 is next year, winter next year. The diamonds are just pieces, or you can see they're just spots in there where we're doing more refining until we come to the end, which is one alternative. Today we're going to show you 5. What we were trying to bring into the environmental review process is 2 or 3. So as we narrow it down and refine to get to what the tolls will look like. I-5, I think, can you go to the next slide? Do you have the Pell in this deck? Is it the next one?
No, Pell isn't.
Okay, then go back to, and I'll just talk through it. So the pink is I-5, and those, you can see there's a gold diamond or a yellow diamond in quarter 4. We're going to start a pre-plan, kind of pre-planning for NEPA this year. It takes about a year to do that, and what we're trying to do is narrow down the alternatives. Right now, there's so many permutations out there. We're trying to narrow them down to a handful, and we'll be coming out for public comment for that also. We'll start this same process that we're doing now for I-205, or I-5, next year, late next year, actually. The orange dot is quarter 4, so late next year, we'll start this same process with I-5. Next slide, please. This is specifically for I-205 and very, very specific as to, I had those little diamonds, now they're just kind of bigger to show you that this is the time, or these are the things we're going to go through kind of on the timeline. But I think what we're trying to show here is that pretty blue box at the bottom, which is a lot of public comment, a lot of public engagement, a lot of public input, and that's what we're looking to do. We'll be changing out quarter 1, 2021 for sure. It says public open houses, and we will be virtual then also. And in this virtual environment, it means that we have to do more of what we're doing now. Instead of meeting people at community fairs, we're meeting them virtually and trying to literally ask people, how do we even do that better? Where are those places that we need to be? So we're coming to you in hopes that you'll go back out to your constituents and give them the information that we provide and our website, which we'll have at the end for people to take the survey, provide their comments. And we're just trying to really get out there and give you the information so that way this can continue on and we can receive comments. Next, I think Heather is on next. You are. Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, Lucinda. So as Lucinda said, we are in the middle of a 45-day comment period. The project purpose and need, as well as the goals and objectives, are 2 things that we're specifically asking for comments on. The purpose and need is, the project purpose is really the foundation for why we are doing the project. It's the transportation challenge that we're trying to solve, or problem that we're trying to solve. And for this project, for I-205 toll project, it's a dual objective to manage congestion as well as raise revenue to fund congestion relief projects. The dial in the middle kind of illustrates that there's a sweet spot where you can do both, generate revenue as well as manage congestion. Price it too low and you're mostly focused on managing congestion, don't necessarily generate revenue. And if you price it too high, you can price people off of the road, which can manage congestion, but you can sometimes price way too many people off. Next slide, please. So this is the reason why we're doing the project. There's congestion, and congestion is increasing. Population is going to grow in the future, so we look at 2040, 2045 when we do an analysis like this. And when you look out that far, congestion that was 6 hours daily according to 2017 and pre-COVID is going to continue to grow. So this is the reason why we're doing the project. Next slide, please. The goals and objectives, so everything in blue, before we went out to the public with the purpose and need and goals and objectives, we collaborated with our regional partner agencies. So Oregon City was one of those that participated in our meetings. And there was a lot of comments that we received from our partner agencies that we added to what ended up going out to the public. So everything in blue are things that were added based on a lot of the comments that we received from our partner agencies. So the goals and objectives are everything else that isn't transportation related, things that really should reflect the stakeholder and community values. So the first one being around equity And the Equity and Mobility Advisory Committee is going to be critical in helping advise us on how we're meeting that goal and objective. As we move forward, we'll develop performance measures that are based on the goals and objectives that help us measure how well these alternatives are meeting the goals and objectives that we've established. I think it goes to Matt.
Thanks, Heather. Yes, I'm going to talk about some of the technical results from our screening analysis. So before I jump into that, I just want to reiterate some of the schedule points that Lucinda made. A lot of work has been done on this through the value pricing feasibility analysis previously, the sort of regional study that recommended tolling on this piece of I-205, but we recognize that there's a lot more work to go. So we're sort of at this in-between stage where we are looking to figure out which of these alternatives should go forward for the more detailed study that's needed. So again, the value pricing feasibility analysis looked at tolling up and down I-5 and I-205 as a region. As part of that came this recommendation to toll a single point toll on the Abernathy Bridge, so anybody crossing the bridge pays the toll. Relatively easy to understand. Next slide, please. Then we looked at that and said, okay, a variation of that, it would be to also place gantries on either side of the bridge to capture anybody who is trying to avoid the toll by just jumping off of I-205, cutting through Oregon City, and jumping right back on. Next slide, please. So alternative 3, this is kind of a different one. So in this case, we're splitting the toll between the Abernathy Bridge over the Willamette River and the bridges over the Tualatin River. So essentially for a through trip, just passing through this whole corridor, no difference. But for a local trip accessing along Oregon 43 or at 10th Street, interchanges, they'd essentially pay half the toll. Next slide, please. The same concept, just advance further on, is alternative 4. So this splits that toll into 4 segments instead of 2 segments. So it's kind of a pay-as-you-go. For a through trip, essentially the same toll rate. For shorter distance trips, local access trips that are only using 1 or 2 of the segments, they would pay less. Next slide. Alternative 5 is same area from Stafford Road to Oregon 213, but same toll regardless of how much you travel. A through trip would pay the same as a local access trip, and the toll gantries would be located at each of the potential entry points to the highway, the on-ramps, or on the main line. Next slide. So there's a lot of considerations. You saw how they're listing all those goals and objectives. We don't have all those captured here. We're looking at kind of a subset of the measures that we'd be looking at in the full study, but we think we can use those to compare these alternatives against each other. So we have the transportation system demand, how much people are driving and how much time they're spending and how many vehicles are on the roadways in the overall network. I-205 traffic, how much volume is on I-205, how much stays on I-205. Diversion, that's certainly a big concern we hear again and again. What kind of changes in travel patterns are there going to be? Increases on other roadways, shifts to other kinds of travel. Cost and revenue, we have several measures there, but the key one is the net toll revenues available to fund improvement projects. And then we have some qualitative ones focused on implementation, long-term flexibility, scaling to that future system from the value pricing feasibility analysis. Next slide. Changes in traffic volumes. Again, we're relying on the Metro Regional Travel Demand Model, an established tool. We're looking at 2027 results. What we're seeing there is a decrease in volume on I-205, diversion. We're seeing that on those tolled segments, depending on which alternative you're looking at, most of the segments are generally decreasing by 15 to 35% over a day. 2 important points to note there. It's less during the peak hours on a percentage basis than the off-peak hours. And then immediately outside of the tolled areas, between I-5 and Stafford Road to the west and 82nd Drive to the north, you see smaller percentage decreases over the course of the day. So this becomes relevant when we talk about those diversion and rerouting patterns that emerge. Next slide, please. Okay, so there's a decrease in volume on I-205. What happens? Some of that volume is regional traffic. So we look at rerouting from that perspective. Some of that volume is local rerouting near tolled areas. Generally, the regional rerouting component is the same for all of our alternatives, while the local has some significant differences between these different alternatives. Not all the traffic is just going to take a different route. Some of it is going to change the time of day, the destination. Some of it is going to shift people from driving alone to sharing rides, maybe taking transit. Our early modeling results say there would be fewer drive-alone trips overall. About 4,000 to 5,000 people would shift from driving alone to sharing rides. There is some potential for a shift to transit as well, but it's relatively small, fewer than 500 trips per day. And these shifts are generally similar across our alternatives. Next slide, please. Okay, so rerouting onto other roadways. Logical to think, toll I-205, people are going to jump over to I-5. We're seeing some of that, but not at a big scale, generally 0 to 2%. We're seeing some decreases closer to the I-205 corridor and some increases in South Portland. These percentages, 0 to 2%, 2 to 5% at the highest, are much lower in the peak hours when there's already a lot of congestion on the network. The changes during the peak hours themselves are generally pretty negligible on I-5. Next slide, please. Oregon City, definitely in all of our alternatives sees additional traffic. So some of the rerouting is going to be through Oregon City. The key point here, we recognize this in the value pricing feasibility analysis as one of the key issues. If you look at alternative one, cutting through downtown Oregon City on the Arch Bridge, it's a pretty significant percentage. And a big part of the alternatives 3, 4, and 5 and kind of developing those options was to kind of address that pattern. So those other alternatives still do see increases in traffic through Oregon City, but it's substantially less than the original concept. Next slide, please. We have a lot of work to do to identify what rerouting analysis, the rerouting looks like. In the feasibility analysis, it was just identifying what roadways could be impacted. At this screening level, we're trying to dial that in and figure out which locations need to be looked at for further study. So we're identifying that scale, how much percent increase that could potentially be seen, showing that over the daily level, during peaks and off peaks. The environmental assessment is really where we get into the more detailed study, the traffic engineering work that needs to be done at the key study locations and intersections and figure out if tolling is kind of blowing up the local system. If it is, mitigations need to be identified. All intersections and roadways have mobility standards identified and they have to meet those minimum standards. All of you know there's already a lot of congestion across the Arch Bridge. So we need to refine our tools and we need to look at them in more detail, and that's what will happen in the environmental assessment. At this point, next slide, please. At this point, what we're trying to do is get down from these 5 alternatives to 2 or 3 that will go forward into that more detailed level of study. So this is a very high-level look at those same criteria that I talked about up front. It's comparing these alternatives against each other. There isn't a no-build or no-toll alternative included in this stage of the analysis, but that definitely will be one of the alternatives that move forward in the environmental assessment. But again, at this point, we're trying to figure out better outcomes from tolling, and this is sort of the framework we've established for that. All of that is going towards our recommendations for which of these alternatives should move forward for further study. Next slide, please. And so at this point, our project team has looked at this, and we think that alternatives 3 and 4 are the best alternatives to move ahead in more detail. Alternative 1, while it was relatively simple and easy to understand, had that concentrated rerouting effect through Oregon City. Alternative 3 is generally performing better than alternative 1, and again, kind of reduces that rerouting pattern. Alternative 4 is the most flexible option for long-term managing traffic congestion in the corridor. It is more complicated, but we think it has the best potential to work well in the long run. Alternative 5, while it had some benefits to it, ultimately charging the through trips, the same as local trips, was a consideration. And there was concentrated rerouting effects on the edges, on the outside parts of that, through Gladstone and on the west end of the corridor. So that's our recommendations, and we very much want to hear from you all, which, if we're on the right track with these.
What's next? Go ahead to the next one. More of these briefings, we are trying to make sure we get out. As I said, we're looking for comments. I think the next slide is, gives the information of where you can go and take, number one, look at our open house, take our survey, email us with your comments, voicemail us. Tomorrow we're having a webinar. It'll be on YouTube and YouTube and Zoom. We take chats, comments there, send it into our email. We answer questions online. So any way you can get in your comments, we're taking them and we're asking for them. So Matt gave you an overview of what the 5 alternatives look like. Heather, purpose and need, and the goals and objectives. And those are all in draft. Nothing is final. We are looking for comments to refine them. Next slide, please. Oh, our contact information, and just want to say thank you for this time this evening. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, do we have time for a question?
I will take a quick question from each of the commissioners.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Broussard, just a question for you. I do want you to know that I have taken the survey and submitted my comments, and I encourage all my fellow Oregon City residents to do the same. I wanted to know what other interstates is ODOT planning to study, or are they planning to do other studies for tolling on different freeway systems?
I-5 and I-205 are the first two identified.
And then what do you think you're looking at after that?
Don't know. We're talking 6-7 years from now.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for your work, and thank you for the informative presentation.
And thank you. We appreciate it.
Commissioner Law-Smith, do you have anything?
Yes, so I noticed in the slides, it looked like you were reworking Highway 43 intersection. Is that assumed to be part of the tolling alternatives? Or did I look at the slides wrong?
Yeah. Good attention to detail. The I-205 widening project is assumed in all of our build alternatives, all of our toll alternatives, and that widening project includes reconfiguration of the Oregon 43. That work predates this project, but it's kind of included in our evaluations.
Okay.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Unmute.
Phone, please.
Unmuting. I'm going to speak as a private citizen. I too took the survey. And honestly, I feel it's like dealing with a child, you know. It's like, you're going to clean your room or you're going to clean your room. There's 5 choices and every one of them is a toll. There's nothing in there that says come up with a better idea. Like, if you want to build new lanes and toll new lanes, that would be supportive. And the fact that the funds are dedicated to what's called congestion relief projects, despite what our presenter said, there's no guarantee that we'll even get them. They could go to do Beaverton or West Side or something else. So I took the survey, and I'll tell you what, my comments are, I don't believe in tolling lanes that were previously paid for by taxpayers and motorists. And if you want to start with one, start with I-5. This is a big Portland thing, you know, and let them do it. I mean, I've lived on the East Coast, and I've seen I-95, north and south, through Baltimore, D.C., and everything else, be tolled. So, and I've seen them successfully up in the East County, up in Seattle, but the way this thing is presented, it's like, well, what toll do you want? Because you're going to get a toll. And quite honestly, I'm totally opposed to the way we're going about it. And that's just as a private citizen, and enough said by me. Thanks.
Mr. Smith?
I would share some of the same feelings, but one of my issues or questions, I guess, is why is this conversation and the widening of the Abernathy Bridge all compartmentalized? If you go to the I-205 improvements website, Stafford Road, Oregon 2 to Oregon 213, there's no mention of tolls at all. we had a separate presentation about the expanding the lanes on Abernathy Bridge, and that was a completely separate presentation from this conversation, and there's no links in between. So if anyone goes to the website to look at information about the widening of the Abernathy Bridge, there's nothing about tolling, and this conversation basically says that the tolling is all kind of centered around that bridge. To me, that just seems to not fulfill any community outreach, you know, just even on a basic level.
Thanks, sir. So my comments are that I think ODOT's missing a lot of things here. And one of the things they're clearly missing, I made sure that I got Mayor Hodgson of Canby involved in our regional or our county group that's talking about this tolling. And there's going to be massive diversion off of I-5 through Canby, through Oregon City if this project happens. And I'm not sure, you know, I don't put a lot of faith in computer modeling at this point, especially when you're talking about human behavior. And you might be able to model a casino, you might be able to model a lot of things, but I don't think you're really going to be able to model this kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Complicated human interaction between the system and individuals. At this point, I'm right where Mr. O'Donnell is, and that is that I fervently oppose tolling, especially if it's not dedicated to the area where the tolling is being collected. I don't believe that this kind of tolling is going to help congestion on the system, because I think what it'll do is just divert onto our local roads. And if anybody's been downtown Oregon City at rush hour trying to get on or off the Arch Bridge and then through downtown is bad already. So if you put this in place, it's going to get 10 times worse. And that's my comment. Thanks to ODOT folks for presenting, and we're going to move on.
And Mayor, I just want to, this is Katie Riggs. I just wanted to let the ODOT folks know I wanted to thank them for doing this presentation. I know they were on the agenda for the last meeting, and it just so happened our meeting prior to that ran an hour over, and so we didn't get started until an hour later, and I know they had been hanging on the line for over an hour waiting, and unfortunately we just didn't get connected. So I want to thank them again for coming back around and presenting to us tonight.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you again. Hey, Mr. Broussard, can I ask a personal question?
Sure.
Are you in relation to Bruce?
I don't know.
Apparently not then. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mayor, next on the agenda is citizen comments, and we do have some folks in the audience and on the phone. So if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and call a couple of folks that are in the audience first. I have Gina Gonzalez.
Hello. Thank you for taking the time to hear from citizens. My name is Gina Gannon Gonzalez, and I am here tonight in response to a comment made by Mayor Holliday during last commission meeting. Mayor Holliday, after citizen input, you said that you responded to every letter a citizen wrote you. I am here to share with you and everyone watching that on June 11th, I sent an email to you with the subject line reading, "Extending a Hand of Grace." In the email, I attached a letter I wrote directly to you. I recognized the divisive climate within our city, and I asked if we could have that hard conversation about how to repair the damage that had been taking place. Sadly, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure you ever opened the email. I sent my letter to each one of the commissioners here tonight. Each one responded. Whether it was a few sentences or a few paragraphs, they acknowledged my letter. After the August 5th commission meeting, I followed up with Ms. Riggs to verify my letter had gone through and inform her the timestamp of my efforts to reach to you. At the June 16th meeting, I watched concerned citizen after concerned citizen come forward to share their thoughts about why they felt you should resign as mayor. Your only responses were next and move along. You blatantly dismissed our concerns and intentionally ignored our voices. If you read my letter, you know that I feel strongly about ethical leadership. I feel one of the qualities of a good leader is their ability to listen to their constituents, as well as listen to those who oppose them. An ethical leader lifts the city morale up by letting them know we are being seen and heard. It is one thing for a leader to hold a differing opinion, but it is another to refuse to have that conversation about it. And that is why I chose to become the chief petitioner in the recall of Dan Holliday. I want a leader who will unite us, not divide us. Your fellow commissioners have asked you to resign and done all they can to express that they have no confidence in your leadership. Since they are unable to remove you with votes and you will not resign, the people of Oregon City will stand up for ethical leadership by recalling you. I will personally make every effort to remove you, so Oregon City can elect an ethical leader who lets all their citizens know they are seen, heard, and they matter. Thank you for my time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next, Kate?
Next is Adam Marl.
City Commissioners, for the record, my name is Adam Marl, and I am a resident of Oregon City. I'm here to provide some recall updates. First, our campaign is continuing to generate enthusiasm from a broad base of concerned citizens that are paying attention to local government for the first time in their lives. As we speak, a group of them are waving signs and collecting signatures right outside City Hall. Mr. Holliday still has the opportunity to resign and thereby spare the citizens any more pain from his actions. Second, we raised over $5,000 last week alone, which will go toward our efforts to mail signature sheets directly to OC voters. This mailer allows us to expand the reach of the campaign while continuing to respect COVID-19 related public health restrictions. Please make sure to look out for these mailers in the coming weeks and spread the word. Third, and although it may seem odd, I want to extend my gratitude to the mayor. Through his outrageous behavior and lack of leadership, he has unwittingly brought the city together and encouraged residents to get involved with their local government at a time when it is desperately needed. Many of you know that I am a member of the same political party as the mayor and run in many of the same circles that he does. Despite these overlaps, let me reaffirm loud and clear that party is simply a label that comes second to my commitment to the city I know and love. When I saw an older woman wearing a MAGA hat patiently waiting to sign the recall petition right behind a younger man wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt, I knew we were going to be a force to be reckoned with. Though the power and promise of student involvement, like my own situation, should not be understated, in the end, there is something to be said when a 20-year-old must spend their summer vacation dealing with this because an elected official refuses to be held accountable for his actions and resign for the good of his community. Nevertheless, this campaign has given me the great privilege of meeting so many incredible OC residents who are just as passionate about the future of this city as I am. It is for these reasons and more that I sit before you today, a proud son of Oregon City, a graduate of our public schools, and a concerned citizen fighting for the city I love, to assure the City Commission that Mayor Holliday's time in office is limited. I want you all to know that my team is working hard to ensure that you four are able to do the work of the city without the mayor hindering your progress and, by extension, our progress. To anybody watching, please make sure to sign the petition and tell your friends, family, and neighbors in Oregon City to do the same. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and online at recalldanholliday.com. For the sake of future generations, let's make sure that we did what we could to restore the great name of our historic city. Let's recall Dan Holliday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Who's next, Kate?
Next, I have Jess Hernandez.
How you doing, guys? My name is Jesse Hernandez. I've lived in Oregon City for going on 20 years. I'm here today to actually point out a huge double standard that's going on in the COVID-19 restrictions here in Oregon City. I took my daughter to the park a couple weeks ago. We were gonna walk around a little bit, play on the swing sets. Hillendale Park, I get to the tire swing, and there's, not kidding you, 5 padlocks and a chain locking the tire swing to the top of the rail there. So that kind of pushed me to a breaking point. I'm not much of an activist. I've served this country. I've served my community. Pretty much gone along with any laws that have been put in front of me. But my older daughters have, they grew up playing on that swing. Kind of just pissed me off. Next day, took my daughter to the park, brought some bolt cutters with me, clipped the bolts off, and put my daughter on the swing. And she had a great time. And it didn't feel wrong, which was crazy about it. I guess it's just the crazy times we're in. You go normally you would think that's pretty out of place, taking your daughter to the park and having to bring bolt cutters. But anyway, we moved on. I put the bolt cutters away. We walked around the park a little bit. I come back about 20 minutes later, and the park host is trying his ass off to remove the swing completely. There's a picture of him. Actually, he's on the back of his bed of his little gator, trying to remove the swing. He tried for like 45 minutes. He couldn't get the swing off. So he went back up, and my daughter and I are watching the ducks and just kind of watching him, what he's doing. He came back down. He gets a bigger chain and more locks, and he locks it back up again. To make it more kind of silly, at the same park, as many of you guys know, there's a racket court or a basketball court and a tennis court going on over there. Well, there was about 30 senior citizens playing pickleball with no masks, no social distancing, nothing that I could see, and he wasn't bothering them at all. But to him, and to what I can tell for the other city parks when I've checked in, or the other parks in Oregon City, restricting our kids is a bigger deal. Which is, I thought that restricting our kids from movements and the young, healthy people from movements was to protect senior citizens. To me, it seems like there's a double standard. There's more senior citizens out playing in the park right now than there is kids. And, and I don't think I think that we're going too far there. It's not that I don't think that we need to have some restrictions in place, but I feel like Oregon City, for some reason, is going above and beyond when it comes to our kids, of all people, the kids that need to get out in these communities. I went to Canby a couple days ago and checked out their parks. Well, there's not padlocks on their tire swings, and also there's basketball rims on their hoops. I don't understand why Oregon City feels the need that it's so dangerous to remove the rims off the basketball hoops so that our kids can't go down, get outside of the house for a little bit and shoot hoops, especially under the circumstances. I don't think it's a lot to ask with all that's been taken from them for us to, open up the parks, and especially since they're paid for by taxpayer dollars. And, so I just thought I'd point that out to you guys. I don't know if you guys know that that's going on in Oregon City Public Parks, and it doesn't seem like it's going on in a lot of other parks. So I wonder if there's a change that maybe needs to be made. But thank you,
sir. Can you stand by 1 second, please? Mr. Reed, can you maybe give us a quick update on parks?
While we're waiting for Kendall, Mayor, what I will point out is that the governor has ordered all playgrounds closed at this time. She has also identified that contact sports are prohibited at this time. Football, rugby, wrestling, cheerleading, basketball, hockey. Non-contact sports are allowed, which tennis, swimming, so we included pickleball as tennis. As a non-contact. So we're trying to follow the guidelines that have been set down by OHA, Oregon Health Association, as well as the governor's order. While we're moving through this, we realize that there are, significant impacts on the ability of people to use the facilities that we have in this community while we're trying to manage through this pandemic. One of the biggest complaints that we received early on were kids playing basketball, full contact basketball at multiple parks throughout the city. It was by far one of the largest complaints that we received in our parks system since this began in mid-March. So trying to navigate through this, understand the frustrations. We're trying to follow the guidelines that have been established by the Health Association and the governor.
Okay, thanks, sir. But just let me ask one question. How is tire swing a contact sport?
It's not. The order relates to playgrounds. I guess I was bringing two things together. I'm sorry. One was the playground, one was the basketball court, which is identified as the contact sport.
That's right. Mr. Reed?
Yes. Yes, obviously we would love to have the parks open and all the amenities available to the community. What we're trying to do is follow the governor's order, as Tony stated, and we're just trying to keep people safe. This is not to put undue restrictions on people. And we have reached out to other parks and recreation districts, and they have taken similar steps to make sure that everything is protected, and so we don't put people at risk.
All right, thanks, sir. Does that answer the gentleman's question?
Yes, sir. Just one other thing I'd like to point out, two things really before I take off. It's not just the tire swing that was locked up. Every single swing in Oregon City has been taken down that's been able to. There is not a swing set standing right now. It's almost as if they're dismantling the playgrounds. Two, we pay city workers to do what? Now that they don't have to take care of the parks, why couldn't they wipe things down? Three, Canby seems to be doing it well because I saw a lot of happy kids on Saturday. That's all I got. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, sir. Who's next, Kate?
Next is a participant on the phone. It would be Meg Anderson. I'm going to ask to unmute you now. Meg, if you can unmute your phone and begin by stating your first and last name and city of residency for the record.
Hi, my name is Meg Anderson, and I live in Oregon City. May I begin?
Yes, go ahead.
I would like to voice my opinion regarding the effort to recall Dan Holliday. I have numerous concerns about the behavior of Dan Holliday as the mayor of our city. However, per the commission rules, I only have 3 minutes to convey my concerns. Therefore, I will elaborate on my concerns as it pertains to the health of our community since I am a family nurse practitioner. In April, Dan Holliday attempted to violate the governor's stay-at-home orders in open businesses despite the clear risk that COVID-19 presents to our community. It was not only jeopardizing towards the welfare of Oregon City residents, but it was an embarrassment. COVID-19 is here, and I can tell you it is real. No one is happy it is here. It has tanked our economy, taken jobs, made people ill, separated us from friends and family. However, death is its most permanent and devastating impact. It has killed nearly 400 Oregonians and over 170,000 Americans. When you are the mayor of a city, you are not only responsible for the well-being and safety of its citizens, but should also be able to provide leadership in times of crisis. His utter disregard towards the health of the city he serves is disappointing, to say the least. Additionally, his comments regarding the Black Lives Matter movement were inappropriate, inaccurate, and left his chosen ignorance on full display. Instead of taking an opportunity to engage in meaningful dialogue with members of our community, he decided to make degrading comments about a national civil rights movement. We live in a city that was once the capital of the Oregon Territory. This is where the only state not to originally allow Black people to settle here began. I would expect the mayor of the city to acknowledge the injustices of our past so we can all find an equitable path forward. What does this have to do with health, you may be asking yourselves? Racism is a public health crisis in itself. Failure to recognize how it affects many facets of everyday life is detrimental to the health and safety of our community and its members. As a private citizen, I tried every opportunity to learn, engage, and dialogue during this momentous time in our country. Meanwhile, Dan Holliday, an elected official, can't be bothered to listen or even try. I am not blind to his other failings. Write me a check sound familiar, Dan? Wasting our taxpayer dollars on a personal vendetta against a challenger to your incumbency? 3 minutes is clearly not enough time. Thank you for listening, Commission members. To my fellow Oregon City residents, please go to recalldanholliday.com to find out how to sign petition to recall this man. Let's hold him accountable at the ballot box this fall. Thank you for your time.
Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
So you say a personal vendetta against a candidate running against me. Can you explain to me what exactly you mean by that?
I think you know exactly what you mean by that. You wasted $74,000 fining a man about his roof that eventually got put down in Clackamas Court.
And just to be clear to the public out there, that suit was dismissed with prejudice. So not only did I not do anything wrong, the city didn't do anything wrong.
You shouldn't have sent 3 inspectors to a man's house because you had an issue with him. That's a waste of taxpayer dollars.
I didn't send anyone there to do anything, and Mr. Conkle can confirm that. Thank you, ma'am.
Whatever.
Next, Katie.
Next is Lisa Novak. If you could please unmute your phone, Lisa. Lisa Novak, are you there?
There we go. Good evening, Mayor Holliday and Oregon City Commissioners. My name is Lisa Novak. I am an Oregon City resident in the Park Place neighborhood. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to thank each of you for the support for the Holcomb Boulevard Crosswalk project. And hearing comments from the neighborhood, I can tell that this is a welcome and needed beginning for pedestrian safety on Holcomb. Thank you for listening to citizens of the neighborhood. Going forward, I request that Mr. Lewis and Public Works provide a milestone schedule for the RRFB crosswalk project. This schedule should be divided into 4 separate sub-projects for each of the crosswalks and should include the overall project milestone from scoping and planning to completion. I suggest that this milestone schedule be communicated as a presentation during the monthly TAC meetings. Thank you.
Thank you.
That wraps up our citizen comments. We don't have any more in the audience or on the phone. So we will go ahead and move on to the adoption of the agenda.
Is everybody okay with the agenda?
Yes.
So then, move on. Under general business, we have the 2020 Community Satisfaction Survey, and that'll be City Manager Tony Conkle.
Evening, Mayor and Commissioners. So before you, there was a question about the timing and the contents of the 2020 Community Satisfaction Survey that we're going to put out. So as you recall, we did this about 2 years ago. We budgeted and planned to do it every 2 years to coincide with the beginning of the budget process for the new biennium budget. So as we start this process, we would go through it, get the results, have those available as we roll into November, December, as we're starting to prepare commission goals, staff goals, objectives, and then the budgeting process to help make some informed decisions as it relates to the level of service and the type of services that we're providing to the community. So in order for this to be more helpful to us, the company that we use does this nationwide. And so the vast majority of the questions that are asked in here are very standard so that we can get good comparisons to other jurisdictions throughout the country as to where we fit in terms of satisfaction or not satisfaction relative to these questions. Included in the staff report are the 3 questions from 2018 that were removed. So we have 2 to 3 questions that we can ask. The remainder of these questions are very standard and approved by the company for consistency's sake. And then in 2020, we're showing the questions that we added. This is to coincide with the comprehensive plan update that we're doing, as well as some of the discussions that we're having about water rates, SDCs, infrastructure that's currently going on. The first 2 are pretty broad. What makes Oregon City special, and what about Oregon City would you like to change in the future? We also added Oregon City has great water supply from the Clackamas River and an aging but effective water distribution system. Within 7 years, major investment is required to ensure the city can continue to provide a sufficient supply of water on a reliable basis to meet the needs of our community. The city charter requires voter support to increase rates greater than 3% 3%, or an increase in indebtedness, loans or bonds. What would be your preferred way to pay for system improvements? Underfund system needs by limiting water rate increases to 3% annually, resulting in mandatory water curtailment and reduced water system reliability. Fully fund needed system improvements by securing bonding or loan, taking on debt and limiting rate increases to no more than 5% annually. Fully fund needed system improvements without debt and raise water rates 5% or more annually. Fully fund needed system improvements by adding a property tax and limiting water rate increases of 3% annually. And then there was a water quality satisfaction component to that as well, addressing water pressure, clarity, taste, smell, and water service. So I guess this is what we are proposing as the 2020 survey. So be happy to answer any questions or try to address any concerns commissioners may have.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Well, first, I think when we do get the results of this, it's interesting to read the previous survey as a baseline and see what has changed, because it's interesting what the community concerns were. My personal issue with the final question that was added about water is I feel it needs some clarification. In fact, I think it was on a voter's pamphlet. It might be pulled because it's vague. We're asking, and we actually essentially threaten the population that we say, well, if you underfund the system needs by limiting water rate increases to 3% annually, resulting in mandatory water curtailment and reduced system reliability. My question to those, and perhaps is in a report, and perhaps Mr. John Williams can summarize it for us. What I do know is this community, the existing community of Oregon City, is not interested in funding future development, that we want future development to pay for itself. So the question in plainest terms, does the existing 3% allow us to maintain our system that services our existing customers? And is there any portion of this addition that's requested in above and beyond 3% that is dedicated to upsizing, some portion of which will be devoted to future development, or for funding or subsidizing future development? Again, the basic question is, new development should support itself. If we don't have the wherewithal to do that without raising the percentage, we need to have that conversation. But the question needs to be clear, that 3% is for repairs to existing infrastructure, no portion of which is dedicated to servicing or providing service to new development. Is that something Mr. John Williams can say with certainty?
I assume you meant John
Lewis, hopefully.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. I appreciate the question, and it has been a challenge on these survey questions to kind of narrow the focus and ask a question that's meaningful. The answer to your question is the 3% does not meet the needs of the current population in Oregon City. We find ourselves struggling during peak hour to meet the needs of the current development in Oregon City. And my concern, especially as we go into the summer, is high usage during hot weather. We hear a lot about urban fire. That kind of scenario would put us in a very difficult situation. So the 3% is, in our opinion, is not covering that. And so we do have an SDC element and an element for growth. Could we write this question in a way that better articulates, we're talking specifically about our specific needs? We can look at that. I'd be happy to sit down with Kristen and kind of keep working on that question.
I personally would appreciate it. I don't want any vagueness in it. And I think your chances of success with a reasonable answer from the population are, if you can define for them that 3% will not maintain the existing infrastructure to existing customers, that's what needs to be stated. And then if there's a breakout portion that said, would you be willing to pay an additional 2% to subsidize additional development in Oregon City? Because that's a very different question, and I don't like it that the only stated, I don't know, I want to call it a threat, but negative consequence is the first criteria which is if you underfund it, you will experience mandatory water curtailment and reduced system reliability. In fact, have we experienced that to date? This has been an incredibly hot summer. Have we had to curtail our water, or have we had failures in system reliability in these very hot times?
This summer, we've been concerned about it. We've been watching it 24 hours around the clock, but we have not done a mandatory curtailment. We've only used the curtailment programs that are out there that encourage folks to curtail their water usage, water consumption.
Again, my suggestion is just to clarify the question. I think it would serve us, the community, better. So that's all I need to say. Thanks.
Okay.
Does anyone else have a question?
Yes, Mayor, this is Commissioner Lau-Smith.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I also don't like this question. I think it's too confusing for the general survey taker to try to figure out bonding versus, I think you could probably get the answer, which is what Mr. Commissioner O'Donnell was going to, in a much more simple question. I actually, I was going to say remove the question altogether because I think the question 6 from 2018 should stay in there because we haven't resolved the parks issue. And I think, we've been waiting on a new Parks and Rec director, and I'm hoping that this topic of how we're supporting our park system is going to come back onto our agenda here before too long. I feel like the water question, at the end of the day, we know it's going to need to be funded. It's a policy decision by the city commission, I think, on how we're going to go about doing it. So I'm just not sure what you're going to, and it feels a little bit more of I'm just priming the pump for what we know is coming of supporting the doing a tax increase or trying to pay for our water system. So that's it.
I actually concur with Commissioner Lau-Smith on that parks question. I think it needs to be re-included. Commissioner McGriff, you have anything for us?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Holliday. I do. I agree that at least one of the park questions should stay in there. I know that one of the charges of our new parks director is going to be the creation of a process to develop a parks master plan overall, so we have more of a vision on where we're going with our parks. So I think that's important. I also concur with Commissioner O'Donnell that I thought the question was a little too wordy, and the way you phrased it, I thought could be included as long as it's simplified. The other thing I wanted to ask, since those were comments, the question I have is for Mr. Conkle. In terms of the distribution of the survey, I, again, remember from reading the previous survey that it was random. It was kind of here and there. So are they going to deploy this in a different random way so that the people who got it last time don't get it this time? I don't know how that's going to work.
Yes, it'll be a random survey to make sure, though, that we hit the specific demographics and racial makeup consistent with the community.
And the only reason I ask is that every so often, when I've mentioned this survey to people, I said, did you get one? So I'm hoping this time that I will know somebody that knows somebody that actually filled it out, because I don't know of anybody that I've talked to in the last year and a half that actually got the survey and filled it out. So I'd like to know somebody that knows somebody that actually filled it out. You did? Okay, take that back. I know somebody that filled it out. Okay, I take that comment back then. Thank you, Mayor Holliday.
Commissioner Smith.
I don't have anything in addition to what's already said. I agree with the park question. Clearly, people are in a different financial situation now, so their interest in being able to pay extra taxes on various things is probably a lot different than it was a year ago.
So if I hear, sorry, go ahead, Mayor.
Go ahead, sir.
Oh, I was just going to say, so I guess if I'm hearing this correctly, we'll pull the water question and add the parks question back in from 2018.
Oh, I was okay with leaving the water question with the changes, but
Let's
I am
put the
too.
parks question back in and let Mr. Lewis and Ms. Brown rework that water question and see if it satisfies Commissioner O'Donnell.
Is it that we can only swap out 3 for 3? Is that it?
If I could have Ms.
Brown
Brown
is
come
coming up.
Oh.
Thanks. So the question was about swapping the questions out or adding an additional
only get
question. And what the survey company does, once we get it packaged up, is they run it through multiple people, multiple systems to make sure the survey takes no longer than 30 minutes. So 3 additional open-ended questions is what we were given. So I could add a 4th question and see if that works within the limit. But then I would kind of want to know what you guys felt, if we had to kill one of the questions with the addition of the parks, would it be the water question? Would it be the comprehensive plan question?
I'd try for the 4th, see what we get.
Right, but if we can't, what would we want to kill?
If it was up to me, that we'd kill the water question before we kill the parks question. Mr. O'Donnell?
I'd agree with that. I'd support you and all my other fellow commissioners. I think the parks question needs to be revisited. I think there needs to be a higher degree of confidence in the survey that was done, condition of equipment, breakdown as to where we get the most bang for our buck and what's the most recognizable in a way of improvements by our community. So I'm prepared to put the parks question back in at the expense of the water question.
Mr. Conkle, does that satisfy you?
I believe I have direction. I saw Commissioner O'Donnell, I think I saw Commissioner Lyle Smith agree, or did I misread that?
Yes, I guess my last comment I'll make is the question of what makes Oregon City special. I know that's a question for the comp plan, the 2020 comp plan. I don't know how valuable that question is, where I think the water question and the other parks question that we talked about, Q6, are more valuable than asking that what makes Oregon City special. But that's just my take. I'm willing to drop the water question for the parks question.
I guess I'm going to be the
let's move on.
Odd person out, and I'd rather drop the what makes Oregon City special and keep the water question and the parks question. And maybe we can do something on our website that says, why do you think Oregon City is special? Just as one question.
Yeah, I felt like the what makes Oregon City special is kind of a, it's it's a very open-ended, it's kind of a bland question,
Well,
whereas the other ones are very.
It's a feel-good question, and we need a feel-good question.
So.
Okay, let's move on.
Okay, so just to clarify, if we have to drop one, we will be dropping the water question.
That's correct.
I want the what makes Oregon City special dropped out.
Work it out, put it in an email, send it to us, and we'll let individuals get back to you. What's next, Katie?
All right, next on our agenda is John Lewis is up with the guaranteed maximum price and the construction for the Public Works Parks Operations Complex.
Or his assumed name, John Williams.
Yes, again, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for taking the time to put this on the agenda. This is another exciting project. I think of it as another fun project. It's been a long time coming. Listening to Wyatt talk a little bit about urban renewal and his interview process. This project was out there in when I started working for the city in 2004. So getting to a place of being able to build something is super exciting for me. I appreciate all the effort that the commission has put into site acquisition of First Street. That opened a huge door to success on this project, and we feel like we're utilizing it to the fullest. So Gerald Maroney, or Jerry from Plan B, has prepared this presentation, is going to go ahead and present it. So just feeling really good about the team, really good about the design, and looking forward to moving forward into construction. Jerry, you want to introduce yourself and take away the presentation?
I can indeed. Good evening. Thanks, John. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the Commission. Jared Mulrooney with Plan B Consultancy. I'm the project manager for this exciting project. Our agenda tonight is to give you an overview of where we are currently and an update since we last presented to you folks back on the 6th of May, believe it or not. I'm going to talk through progress since that last meeting. I'm going to talk about project timelines, focus a little bit on design, talk about our project update and our GMP, as well as next steps, and then turn it over to yourselves for any questions. So quickly, overview of the project. You've seen this slide a couple of occasions now. Obviously, we're trying to incorporate public works, community services, engineering, GIS, and information technology all under one house. In the office space, which is at the front of that slide that you see on the right-hand side, and then our fleet and workshops immediately behind that in the existing building. We've been working very closely with John, Vance, and Denise from the city, and as always, we've been very appreciative of Commissioner O'Donnell's input over the last 11 and a half months, almost 12 months of design. The project team, just to refresh, it's ourselves, myself and Sam Egger from Plan B. We also have Brandon Dole, who's leading the charge from Scott Edwards Architecture, and Jordan Fell, and Bill Judge from Emmerich. And the team has been tremendous to date, and I'm applauding their efforts publicly tonight. So since we last met in May, we filed for our land use and we got approved at the end of July. We did have 4 conditions that I'm going to talk about briefly later on in the presentation. We've submitted for a building permit. It's currently working its way through review, and we're hopeful by the end of this month that we're going to see approval. Our 50% construction documents got issued back in the middle of July. And as a collective team effort, we decided that we would push for guaranteed maximum price, not guarantee at that stage. Emmerich issued publicly for bidding each of the individual packages and scope, received tremendous response from contractors and subcontractors and bidders. It's been reflected in the numbers that I'm going to show later on. And also, we've concluded our 100% construction documentation. They got issued a couple of weeks back. So overall, we are very well on track and on schedule. Just the kind of project timelines, just to visualize everything that I've just said there. The most important thing now we're at is the second line from the bottom, the GMP stage, and hoping to hit construction the end of this month, with conclusion roughly 13 months from now. That keeps us on track with our original timelines that we had outlined with John when we came on board May of last year. Very quickly, just going to touch on the site plans, just to refresh your memories. You can see that to the left-hand side there, we've got our access into the property, working our way down south, just right there we are, Katie, thank you. That's the new entrance plaza area. You'll recall that we had some constraints to overcome here with access and elevation issues. We've achieved all that. The building itself has now been fully set out, fully programmed out, and also the warehouse. So pretty good progress has been made over with them.
Jerry, we're losing you. You might have to shut your video off.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Okay.
Next slide, Katie, please. Not to dwell too much again, this is a similar design that you've seen before. Each of the color coordinations represents operations in parks and green, the locker room locations, as well as fleet and maintenance. As well, I'm not going to dwell too much on this floor plan unless we've got questions at the end. Next slide, Katie, please. Second floor, we still managed to keep the configuration for engineering on this level.
Oh, we lost you, Jerry.
Gives us, oh, gosh. Okay.
Can you turn off his video?
Where did you leave me?
We're gonna turn your video off.
Floor.
We left at the second floor.
Okay, second floor. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, very good. I apologize. Okay. So I think what I was just saying was we've managed to keep the future expansion and fit out completely engineered on the second floor, which was a slight concern at the end of the last design phase that we wouldn't achieve that. However, we have. So, you know, we've hit all our targets and our criteria that was outlined to us from John at the start of the project. Next slide there, Katie, please. Okay, so I've got a couple of renderings just to show. We've not showed these to you guys before. So this is first floor as you walk in the main building. This is the welcome that the public will get. So you can see the kind of color tones that the architect is imagining. You know, pretty standard. There's nothing too outrageous here. That's not, you know, bust our budget by any means. The next slide, Katie, please. This is continued up to second floor as you work your way into engineering. So it kind of keeps the same theme. On the next slide, please. This is just a general finishes palette. I believe this palette has been in commission chambers for the last number of weeks for people to review. Again, the kind of tones are pretty straightforward. A lot of the finishes have an excellent life cycle on them, pretty robust, and not very, you know, in terms of our budget, the architects have worked well within the constraints that we've set with them for finishes and costs. So our project budget, as you recall, when we presented in the 6th of May, we had a 50% design development estimate come back that was putting us over our budget by roughly 2.2 million. The project team had worked tremendously to get it back towards 10 million, 10.2. However, there was a couple of items that we felt certainly needed to be kept in the project. The seismic upgrading of the office space, the fleet maintenance workshop, we wanted to keep as much of that in as possible. And the ADA ramp as well was a late addition that I talked about earlier on the first site plan. So we updated you guys on an increase of roughly 1.4 million on our original budget to get us to 12.8. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the GMP next on the next slide, but we've managed to keep within this budget of 12.8. So the breakdown to it, the professional services fees, again, you've seen this before, but just to recap, that's all the, you know, the consultants' costs are all part of that 1.5 million. Construction costs was 10.2. Permit bonds, fees, etc., $500,000, and then our third-party contracts, which pretty much makes up the furniture, the AV, the IT fit-out, communications and licensing and all that kind of stuff. So that gets us to our 12.8 million. Next slide there, Katie, please. So after the bidding process, the 50% construction documents that our contractor went through, they've brought their number in at 10.179 million. So the guaranteed maximum price, as you can see here, it's the actual costs the contractor is going to do the work for, plus their fixed fee. We've worked closely with the contractor over the last number of weeks to make sure that they've, you know, publicly advertised the projects and followed all the rules, and they have. And we've seen some of the bids starting to come back for the materials and the labor, and we've started to review that process. But from the project team, we're requesting tonight that the Commission endorse the guaranteed maximum price of the 10.179 million, just under a 10.2 budget. Next slide, Katie, please. This was attached, this document on the left-hand side was attached in one of the exhibits as part of the contract documentation. This is the breakdown to the numbers, so you clearly can see on the left-hand side where we were over our projections, and we worked tremendously as a team to get it back to 10.179. A couple of things to point out that's included in the the GMP. We had 4 conditions as part of our land approval. Conditions were as follows. The existing fuel storage and dispensing facility would need to be brought up to current DEQ regulations. As part of the project, we didn't intend to do anything with the fuel station. However, the condition was accepted and included that if indeed we do have to do something or work around that area, then we will comply and bring it up to current regulations. The second condition was to do with landscaping, and the team were to meet the requirements for tree spacing, shrubs, and ground cover under current regulations. Third condition was revised parking lot layout to include for updates to the drive aisles. It wasn't something that we anticipated doing as part of our original scope. However, it's a condition that we are accepting and moving forward with. And then the final condition was also to do with revised parking, and this was identify a minimum of 4 carpool and van pool spots. Also, we were requested to include for 14 public amenities per the land use. So that's, as a design team, we're working through those right now, but it's anything from additional protection bollards to tree wells and planters. We've got some additional architectural lighting, monument signs, benches, bike racks and storage repair stations, public message board, trash and recycling amenities as well. As a team, we looked, as we got the numbers back, we looked at some options to potentially bring some work back into the project, and we identified that the covered parking for all the expensive equipment that the city uses was definitely one that we wanted to explore. Back in May, we told you folks that we had to take that as a value engineering exercise, pretty much to the angst of Vance. But as the numbers came back, we looked at this and we've actually added it back into the scope of work. We still hold an extremely strong contingency as we work into construction of 10%. I'm very, very proud of the team for that. I don't think I've ever worked on a project that had a 10% contingency. And plus, we still remain, still hold a 2.5% contingency for the final GMP buyout. And what I mean by that is, as we base this GMP on the 50% construction documentations, the contractor is allowed a reconciliation with the 100% construction documentations for any changes, and you'll see that there's a 2.5% or just over $200,000 bucket of money to cover that. So we're at 10.179. Next slide there, Katie, please. So from the point of view of the team and our next steps, obviously we're requesting for GMP and contract signing and approval. We would be pushing hard for a building permit to be approved by the end of this month so that we can start construction. Contractor is starting to gear up for mobilization for the end of this month. We also will be holding an employee advisory group meeting just on the final design as well as furniture. That's kind of the next item on our agenda to figure out and get final pricing on. And final point I have here is that we have 2 members of the facilities staff as well to remain housed on the site, the existing site. We're working through that with the contractor. I think that was it in terms of the presentation. So I'm going to turn it over for any questions or comments.
Okay, before we do that, Commissioner Donald, you've had the privilege of attending these meetings, so why don't you give us your update before we take questions?
Well, I heard the word privilege, but I'll answer regardless. I can tell you that there was the soft costs, the amount of meeting hours that were put into this, and I sat in on many, and I didn't sit on all of them, but I sat on many. And I'm sure many times I was viewed as a wet blanket and said things like, I'm not building a country club, and everybody hates the word Taj Mahal, so we're not building a Taj Mahal. I sometimes felt like I was riding herd, and, it's like, don't let your imaginations run wild, because this is a service facility. But in the end, the criteria for me as a policymaker, and not to micromanage, was bring this project in on time and at or under budget. And if not, you better be prepared to make some cuts. And that was the message I consistently delivered. So in the end, I think this group succeeded. I actually want to give credit to Samra Egger for running many of those meetings. I actually want to give credit because there's an ongoing maintenance concern. And I want to give credit to Denise Conrad for her valuable input in the course of those meetings, because what do we do in the future? And quite honestly, here we are with a suitable contingency, an actual generous contingency at a point in time where we've hit all goals. I suppose I would say the guy I really admired that ran this project is Mr. Gerald Maroney, and he did a great job from beginning to end. And to me, he should always be considered for anything we do now or in the future. And if I have one humorous thing to say, I'll say that if in fact my friend Mr. John Lewis wants carpet in his office and it gets dirty, he's going to live with it for as long as I'm a commissioner. That's it.
All right, thanks, sir. I do want to say, since I've been working with both Sam and Jerry on the police building project, they've been nothing but professional and personable, and have run an excellent project for the police building. And thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell, for riding herd on these cats on this project. Look forward to another year of doing this as we go forward to actually start the building. I don't see any questions.
I have one, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner McGriff.
Yes, may I ask Commissioner O'Donnell a question? Sir, he's laughing. I'm glad you're laughing. You had brought a concern to me early on in your committee work with this group about the size of the facilities for the lockers. Did you get that resolved to your satisfaction? Because it seems like the women's is still a little smaller than what you had originally anticipated.
Yeah, and I understand that. And actually, a lot of that was resolved by polling internally and by discussion of the workforce. And I don't want to get into a separate but unequal is intrinsically unequal. I think we're fine.
Okay, well, good, thank you.
Can I just chime in there, if you don't mind me, just on that very topic? The women are doing much better than the men when it comes to a square foot per locker space.
There you go.
Even though there's a 2-to-1 ratio. So, great question.
Anyway,
we have solved the problem.
Good. I'd like to move that we accept the GMP if there's no more questions.
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to make this comment. This is amazing. I really am. It's kind of interesting to think back not too long ago to where this city was in terms of facilities. And we're on the verge of dealing with, finishing the police department, a beautiful library, moving on into seeing what's going to happen with parks and public works in a time where, people are concerned about money and everything. I'm shocked that we're in this situation, that we as a city are able to be in a position where we can do this. And I'm glad to see some of the things that got taken off the list, like the covered parking, put back in. I really am thankful that we had such a core group working on this and the input that was taken. And I think we should all be very, very proud of this project.
Mr. Parno?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make a quick comment. Gosh, I don't want to steal the thunder of all the amazing things that the commission has said. And Commissioner Smith reminds us that City Manager Conkle and the commission and everybody's done an amazing job with the facilities. Also, I was looking at the budget, and I appreciate Jerry and John and Commissioner O'Donnell and all the input there. I do want to say, I want to clarify to make sure that down the road there's no confusion. Now that we have an established budget, and you've done such a great job of getting that in order, that's the budget we should be measured by. So when we put together the separate component of the city's biennial budget, finance may need to go back and look at the timing of that, because I think not only has John Lewis and the team done a good job with the project budget, also seems like they're doing really well and ahead of schedule. So when we put together the city budget back then, that was before the engineers came in and gave us the actual numbers. So I just want to give that caveat that if I have to come before you with a budget adjustment based on the timing between the two bienniums or really early even pre-engineering estimates back when we put the budget together, that would be no reflection negatively on the great work that you all have done on this project budget. So I just want to put that out there. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thanks, sir. We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Frank beat you to it. Further discussion? Call the roll.
I was just going to say, I publicly want to again thank the team, the Scott Edwards team, Brandon in particular, and Emmerich, Jordan, and Bill. It's not all the Plan B show. We're a great team together, and teams succeed or fail, but this one is a success.
Thanks, Jerry. Appreciate that. Call the roll.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff?
Aye.
Commissioner Rachel Lyle Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Dan Holliday?
Aye. What's the next?
Intergovernmental agreement.
I guess while we're waiting, I just want to say thank you to you. It's been great. I'm looking forward to building it. The design team is excellent. You folks have been excellent. Frank, you've been excellent as well in those meetings. I've appreciated your input. So this is one project I think everybody should be excited about this one. So thank you very much.
We're excited.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda, next on the agenda is the intergovernmental agreement with Clackamas County for the storage of city records, and that would be me. So thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Tonight, we're bringing before you an intergovernmental agreement, an IGA, with Clackamas County to store the city records in the Clackamas County Records Storage Facility, meaning that they would manage our stored off-site records. And this has previously been taken care of by Iron Mountain. With that, the lack of customer service that I've received from them over the last few years, the amount of rate increases, and the lack of easeability of retrieval of our records has caused me to look elsewhere, and Clackamas County was a viable option. With that, they are nicely located in Oregon City, which is very convenient. They have been extremely good about customer service and easy to work with, and also very cost effective. So with that, we did have a couple of citizen comments that came in regarding this item. The main point, I believe, of those citizen comments was to try to find the best solution possible to provide our historical records to be available and accessible to the public. And to me, I know the one major point was if they could do some sort of a checkout system at Clackamas County. Right now, that is not an option. Clackamas County doesn't even offer that with their own records, let alone our records. But I do know that they are, like I said, easily located in Oregon City, very convenient. And in the future, it might be something that we could look into. If they decide to start doing that, we could take a look and see what our options are. The long-term plan, as you know, you approved a records and information management strategic plan for the city recorder's office. In that is included to get as many of our city records digitized as possible, and to make the majority of those available to the public online through our own website, through our own resources that we already have. Also, in your goal 4, you have made it a priority for the city recorder's office to do complete inventory of our records. I know that we had quite a few boxes located at Iron Mountain that we honestly we weren't unsure as to what was in them. We had the descriptions on the boxes, just didn't have the comparison in our log. And now that we're transferring them to Clackamas County, if that is the option of the commission they choose tonight, then the re-inventory of that will be a lot quicker and a lot more cost effective. So with that, I'll leave it open for any questions, and that's it.
Okay, well, let me say one thing right off the bat, and that is I would be adamantly opposed to allowing these historical documents to be checked out. I don't have any problem with having a place where they can sit down and read them or even make copies, but many of those documents, if not most of them, are unique and couldn't be replaced if somebody didn't return them or something happened to them when they were, in their custody. So I certainly support the changing that to electronic so people would be able to see those electronically, but those records are way too valuable and important to be allowing individual citizens, no matter who they are, to check them out.
Sure, I might have I just want to state, I might have misspoke there. I shouldn't have used the word checkout. I apologize. In the citizen comments, it was really a place to come and view them. It wasn't necessarily a place to take them with them home and then return them. I apologize. That was my mistake.
All right. That's right. Commissioner O'Donnell.
I still agree with the mayor to an extent. I mean, it has to be a certain degree of security to keep documents from disappearing. So I don't know how that's accomplished, but other than that, I want to compliment our city recorder, Katie Riggs. She has briefed this commission ongoing throughout this process. It's a savings of money, it's more efficient, and she has acted as an excellent steward of the public's dollars, and my compliments to her. And if there are no other comments by others, I would move to approve as presented.
I'll second. But I have a comment.
Commissioner McGrath?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Holliday. I have every confidence that Ms. Riggs will be able to work out a system for people to view these documents. I know that both of the individuals may have used the state archives, and they have a process. The Oregon Historical Society has a process. You can look at things, but you can't check them out. And I have every confidence she'll be able to come up with a process for dealing with the historical record that would meet the satisfaction of any state archive requirements or other requirements that would be satisfactory to the city.
Commissioner Smith, do you have anything for us?
I do not.
Commissioner Smith?
Nope.
Call a roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell, did you have another question, or is your hand still raised from last time?
I'm sorry, I left it up.
Okay, I just want to make sure. So calling the roll, we had a motion by Commissioner Frank O'Donnell and a second by Commissioner Denise McGriff. Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Commissioner Rachel Lau Smith.
Aye.
Mayor Dan Holliday.
Aye. Is the consent agenda next?
Yep, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Call a roll.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Commissioner Rachel Lau Smith.
Aye.
Mayor Dan Holliday.
Aye. Mr. Manager.
I have no updates tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Commissioner McGriff.
Yes, just one update. I wanted to send a shout out to our citizens to make sure that they respond to the census workers. They are out in the neighborhoods right now responding to people who have not filled out either the online or the paper copy. And I think people are underestimating the importance. It has to do with our money coming to our community, also our county, and also it will affect our state representation. I understand we're in line for possibly having a 6th congressional district, so everybody should respond to that, and I want to really encourage everyone to participate. Also, thank you to the staff for the great groundbreaking today at Ladderette Park. It's 2015 to now, and we're moving forward, and I think it's going to be fantastic, and it's also great that it'll be ADA accessible.
Mr. Lyle Smith?
I don't have anything tonight.
Commissioner Smith?
Nothing.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
No, sir, nothing tonight.
Then if there's nothing else to go to the order, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye, good night.
Goodbye.